funding the stimulus money in before April 15th, we're looking at a $200 million hole basically in the red for the general fund. So that's right. We took an unprecedented step yesterday of calling the loan committee. This was that commission I called back in January when I said we're probably going to need to borrow, and the former governor didn't want to do it and left, and so we had to call the meeting again and do it yesterday and authorize it, because it looks like we're going to have to borrow in the next 3 to 4 weeks, just in a short-term basis, what we call overnight borrowing. Effectively, they're called treasurer warrant notes. The best way to understand this would be, think of if you have automatic deduction for your mortgage. You have your mortgage taken out automatically, and it's taken out on Monday, but you don't get paid till Friday. Well, if you're living paycheck to paycheck, that can be a problem. And so you have overdraft protection maybe on your checking account so that you can drop below zero, and they'll go ahead and pay your mortgage for you, and they charge you interest until you get paid on Friday, and then comes back in. That's effectively what the state's going to have to do for a week in April, between the 15th when we pay schools and the 20th when sales taxes are due. And so kind of bridge that. And we're going to be in this situation economically until the recession is over. Even once they balance the budget and revenues and expenditures match up, we're still going to have this problem of bills due on different days than when revenue comes in. And so this is going to be a regular thing of our daily life at the treasurer's office, this new duty of doing treasurer warrant notes as a regular basis, just to keep the cash flowing, keep the state running. If we didn't do that, state checks would start to bounce. And you want to see a riot bounce a payroll check for 50,000 state employees. Not something I want to be around for. The last time the state had to do this was the Great Depression. So it's been a long time. State normally keeps a much larger cash reserve. In fact, a year ago, if you go, or actually 2 years ago, back to January of 2007, the average daily balance in the general fund, $2.4 billion cash on hand. If you go back to January of 2008, $1.8 billion. January 2009, we were down to $736 million, if memory serves. Tuesday, we were down to 145. On Wednesday, I authorized the last dime of the rainy day fund to go in. That was $130 million. Putting that $130 million in with the bills we had to pay that day only got us up to 195. So we had about $100 million go out the door that same day. Of that 195, 110 of that is loans to ADOT. We loan ADOT money so that they can do work, construction projects. Well, we're going to have to call those loans in. And that presents a problem for ADOT, because 60 million of that 110 is their working capital. That's what they use to pay vendors so they can draw down federal funds. That whole drawdown problem. We're not going to have much of a choice. We're going to have to probably call that in the next few weeks, the way things are going. So that kind of gives you the whole picture of the cash flow of the state. The simplest way to describe it, the state is now living paycheck to paycheck. It's your paycheck they're living off of, but literally paycheck to paycheck, and that hasn't happened in a long time. Yes? Okay, from the overall economy, economists fit into three camps. You basically have the 12-month camp that thinks we're going to recover in about 12 months. Start our recovery, I should say. There's the 18-month camp that think we're going to start our recovery in 18 months. And there's the, oh my God, it's the end of the world camp. They're the one that gets all the press and the ink, but they're the smallest group. I actually fit in the 12-month camp. I actually think we will start a very mild and slow recovery this time next year. And I look at a number of factors why I think this is going to happen. And first of all, let's back up a second. Why are we seeing the downturn right now? Why are tax collections so far down? And why did they take a similar dive back in October? Tax receipts, which were actually received, collections were in November. We saw the same spike downward. Well, back up a second. What happened back in September and October? Well, you had the President of the United States, George W. Bush, got up in front of the country and said, if you don't pass my stimulus bill, if you don't pass TARP, the world's going to come to an end. It's going to be as bad as, the Great Depression all over again. Well, that's a great thing to say right before Christmas. That's going to do a lot for consumer confidence. And what happened? Consumer confidence went off a cliff right before the Christmas holiday shopping season. And so what happened? Well, people didn't cancel Christmas, but they pulled back. Half of gross domestic products of the United States, half of all of our GDP is due to consumer spending. So when consumers get nervous, the economy slows. They're intrinsically linked. And so what happens is, especially for governments, our sales tax collection, the vast majority of the collections come off of a lot of purchases that are slow to change. But most of what we call elasticity, or the volatility that causes the big swings, those are due to the big ticket items. Construction sales tax from new home construction, new cars, car sales. Those are the big ticket items. And what did we see when consumer confidence went and plummeted back last fall? Auto sales came to a screeching halt, 40% reduction in auto sales. And that just destroyed sales tax collections. And of course, income tax collections derived off of that. If you're not selling cars, you're not making money off the car sales, which means that guy who was selling cars didn't go out to eat. So the guy who's, serving and cooking the food didn't, and it dominoes through very quickly. And so flash forward. Now, we all know the fourth quarter of 2008 was terrible. It was horrible. It was miserable. Economic statistics take 1 to 3 months before they're reported. So what you're hearing about now is how lousy the fourth quarter of 2008 was. Well, we all know it was lousy. That's why I'm not surprised by how bad the numbers are, because we knew it was bad. We're just now finding out exactly what that number was. But then the new administration, in my opinion, made a tactical error, a huge mistake. And they basically ran the same play that the Bush administration played. To some degree, the Bush administration didn't have much choice. Republican administration, Democrat Congress, you almost kind of have to scare everybody to death to get your bill through an opposite party legislative body. Well, now you have a Democrat president with a Democrat Congress. He shouldn't have had to scare everybody. They should have just passed his bill. Well, for whatever reason, couldn't get it done, so he did the same thing. He got up in front of the public and said, if you don't pass my stimulus bill, it's going to be the next Great Depression. And so what did consumer confidence did? Took another nosedive again. Well, I thought things were going to get better, and that just scared everybody else again. So what you're seeing now is exactly 1 month after that speech. Well, everybody stopped spending at that time, and so the sales tax collections and the other collections that we normally take in are now 30 days delayed from that. We're starting to see that drop off. And so you're seeing that same drop in consumer confidence be reflected in the numbers that are going on now. Now, to some degree, this also plays into why I think we're going to have a recovery begin, a slow recovery in 12 months. Well, I hope and I think they're done scaring everybody. I mean, they got their bills passed now. So they're not going to do this again. And even Congress knows they have to get reelected next year. So, they're going to stop scaring everybody too, because it's time to get reelected. So that politics, normally you don't want Congress messing with your economy, because if you're dependent upon Congress and what they say, get ready for a roller coaster. But the other thing that's going on is, okay, now we've got a situation where we know the first quarter of 2009 is lousy and terrible and going to be bad numbers. So for the next 3 months, we can expect the economic data to be lousy and terrible. But think about this another way. Back during the housing bubble, you had communities that were doing 2,000 building permits a month. Today, they're doing 10. That's terrible. That's a huge drop. But if next fall, next October, they're doing 12, that's a 20% increase. And that's exactly what it's going to get reported at, a 20% increase. And so what you'll start hearing is the numbers coming off